Jamie had a list of rankings risers. Dave said he mostly agreed with them. We'll see if there are any that he disagrees with. We already got James Cook. Let's get James Conner. Currently, over the last month on NFC, he is a round 7 pick, James Conner. He's RB27 after Rachaad White and after DeAndre Swift, ahead of David Montgomery and Isaiah Pacheco. So Conner's RB27 on NFC over the last month. Jamie, where is he for you?
He is just outside the top 15. I think there's a good enough reason to take him in round 4.
Holy cow. James Conner just outside the top 15 in our consensus rankings. He's 16th in PPR and round 4, maybe. Dave, your thoughts?
I agree. If not, even lean a little heavier into James Conner, which makes me a little uncomfortable, but I think that just tells you all about the running back position. I've got him 14th, and I think he is a round 4 pick. I started thinking about him, comparing him to Alexander Mattison. 2 running backs that should get a lot of work in their offenses. And in the case of Conner versus Madison, I feel like Conner is the better talent. I took Conner over Madison.
I would too.
So
I know it feels gross. It feels gross talking about anybody on Arizona because Arizona is going to be gross this year. But Arizona was kind of gross last year. He was pretty good. He's averaged over 15 PPR points per game each of the last 2 years.
He's been great.
Yeah,
he's been top 10.
Volume, touchdowns. He gives you a lot of the things that you want from a fantasy running back. So I think he's one of those settle for number 2 fantasy running backs before 50th overall.
In 4 games with Colt McCoy, 4 games that McCoy threw 21 or more passes, Conner scored, I'll just round up, 27, 13, 23, and 18 PPR points per game, rounded down or up. But I didn't want to give the decimals, but he was incredible. But he scored a touchdown, at least 1 touchdown in every game. He also had 3 or more catches in 3 of the 4 games. We did it against good opponents. But okay, let me just give you the downside of Conner, because round 4, that would be quite a rise. Over the last 2 seasons, there have been 46 running backs with 200 or more carries. He ranks 41st out of 46 in explosive run rate, 33rd in yards before contact per carry, 31st in yards after contact per carry. I think his longest run last year was 23 yards. 2 years ago, he averaged 3.7 yards per carry, or 3.9 maybe. Bounced back to 4.3 last year, but he just does not make big plays. And they were not good last year, but he only played in 3 games where they lost by 10 or more points. In those games, Conner had 10, 14, and 15 carries. So I don't know. I see a lot of reasons not to like it. I don't know that he's that good anymore, I think is basically what it comes down to. He's also played, how about this? He's played behind PFF's second worst run blocking team 3 straight years. He's been behind a terrible offensive line 3 straight years. I know they drafted a running back in the first round, but they still might have a terrible offensive line.
You mean in the first round? Yeah.
What'd I say? A running back? My bad.
A running back. It'd be bad if they drafted a running back in the first round.
So that would be my case against him if I were making one would be, look, we love the touches, but he's not good enough to justify going that high with him, which RB16.
But has he ever been?
Nervous about Najee too. But
yeah, I'm saying like that's the type of guys we're looking at here. We're looking at guys, that are going to get volume here. Like I would definitely take Jahmyr Gibbs over him. I would take Travis Etienne over him. I think Conner, rightly so, and I would take Dobbins over him. But I think he belongs in the group of Madison and Dameon Pierce and Miles Sanders. Just looking at and Najee Harris. I think that's kind of where he lives. Guy's going to get a lot of work. Offense in his case is clearly questionable, but the guys behind him are terrible. And that's I think the selling point is like he's not coming off the field. And I think when you look at obviously the receiving options on this team, they're very thin. Like we're going to pump up, understandably so, Trey McBride because of his situation. Again, no Zach Ertz for probably the majority of the season. They just lost over 200 targets. With DeAndre Hopkins gone, Zach Ertz probably not playing, and AJ Green, who was in the top 5 of targets, if you could even remember that. He had 47 targets last year, which is not bad if that gets distributed, to the running back position. So, they're missing over 200 targets that are going to go somewhere. And, if Kyler is right at some point early in the season, that just makes that offense more deadly and so more scoring chances for him. I know, like you said, Adam, he did well with Colt McCoy, but you'd rather see Kyler Murray there to make this offense more successful. So it might be a reach to say round 4. I would prefer to get in round 5. And if he's going in round 7, depending on where you're looking, if you're following rank lists, you're looking at our rank lists. Clearly, we're going to have him higher than the average draft position. But if you're looking at projections, which is going to drive a lot of what ADP looks like because of auto picks, then you might see him get pushed down a little bit and you get him at a discounted price. So round 5 is where you'd want to draft him, but round 4 is the earliest I would consider taking him.
I'm just going to say you're going to get a lot of him because I don't think his ADP, like I'm looking at Draft Sharks right now. He's around 6 pick. He's RB 25. He's after Cam Akers. He's after Madison, DeAndre Swift. Dalvin Cook is still ahead of him. I guess last guy, we don't have to talk the whole show about Connor, but everything you said about Connor, I feel like it applies to Miles Sanders, except Sanders is younger, has been a better running back. Not as good as catching the ball, though, I guess.
Right. No.
Why would you take Connor over Sanders?
If you buy into Sanders being much more involved in the passing game, then you should absolutely take Miles Sanders.
Agreed. That's what Heath does, right? Heath has Sanders over Connor.
Yeah,
I still have it pulled up, so I can tell you.
Heath has Sanders over like Christian McCaffrey.
Heath has Sanders 11th, and he has Connor 19th. For me, it's Connor, Madison, Sanders, so they're 3 picks apart. To me, they're similar. Dave has
Sanders is way down there.
A big difference. Yeah. He's Sanders 24 and Connor 14.
Michael Thomas is a riser for Jamie. Right now, NFC ADP has Michael Thomas as wide receiver 46 as a round 9 pick, behind Elijah Moore, behind Cortland Sutton, behind Quentin Johnston. Jamie, where do you have Michael Thomas?
So I just want to say I'm not getting fooled again. I'm not ranking him as a starter. I'm not going to go overboard, but he is, crept up to close to being in the 3 receiver range. Just outside of that, I think he's right around 36, 37. But look, if he's healthy, you're going to get a steal on draft day for however many games he may play. He's only played 10 over the last 3 seasons. But I mean, you think about it, even last year, the 3 games that he played, he averaged 16 PPR points per game, just over that. And so while Chris Olave should be the new leader in the clubhouse in terms of best receivers on this team, he's got to get used to a new quarterback in Derek Carr. But I mean, this guy still has the ability to be a I don't want to say a significant difference maker, but enough of a difference maker, especially at the value that you're getting him at. So he'll probably creep into the top 100 if he stays healthy. He'll probably creep maybe into the top 80 picks if he stays healthy. But I think, again, if he does play 10 plus games, 13 plus games, anything close to a full season, what the upside is. He's never going to get back to his 2019 performance where he was a 23 point per game guy. But 16 points per game to get that late, it's certainly worth your efforts to draft him in the appropriate spot.
Keep the name in mind if you don't take a lot of wide receivers early on in your drafts. I already think he is a top 100 player. I've got him at 91st overall, but still outside of my top 36 among wideouts. Great upside, huge downside, but the value is terrific.
Okay, that's Michael Thomas. All right, you've got all of the Chiefs wide receivers basically that are not Kadarius Toney as risers. Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, and Richie James. Would you take Sky Moore ahead of Michael Thomas, Jamie?
They are back-to-back. I would take Thomas first, but I like the setup for both these guys. But I mean, look, I think it depends on your build. If you're looking for, like Dave said, if you want to take a receiver who can clearly, I don't want to say win your league, but again, based on the cost, Michael Thomas, if he plays, is going to be, again, a difference maker. Sky Moore, I think, is still more of a project. So we'll see how these targets get distributed. We'll see what happens with, Kadarius Toney when he's back, because he's going to play. We can't be approaching this as if Kadarius Toney's not going to be there.
Right.
But, Rice, James, Justin Ross, that's another guy that you should, consider a riser as well. All these guys are getting a lot of hype and a lot of publicity from the Chiefs media because they're on the field making plays at this point. So I think Marcos Valdes-Scantling is what he is. You've already seen a year of him in the system. I don't think things are dramatically changing for him. But everybody else has an ability to step up. And to me, Sky Moore is the one you should look at. But again, Rice and Richie James. James is the most proven, so if he's going to be a guy that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid trust, then again, worth your efforts to take him with a late round pick.
How many of these guys do you draft in a 15-round draft, Dave? Let's say kicker and DST, typical draft.
One, and it's Sky Moore.
What do you think Sky Moore? Do you think Sky Moore could be a top 20 wide receiver?
Yes. I'm not going to draft him with that, but I do think that that's basically his upside in PPR.
Okay.
So I mentioned this on, I don't remember which show I was on with Jamie, but Patrick Mahomes throwing to slot receivers. This excludes Travis Kelce from the conversation. He's finished in the top 10 among all NFL passers in targets to his slot receivers last year, top 5 in yards gained by those receivers, and touchdowns scored. He was also in those exact same ranges in 2021, 2020, and 2018, as well as top 5 in yards and touchdowns in his injury-shortened 2019. Mahomes does throw to his slot receivers quite a bit. The question is Sky Moore going to play enough in the slot? That's where Richie James has made a difference in his career. He's been a good slot receiver when he hasn't made mistakes. If that continues on, Sky Moore could be an outside receiver in 2 receiver sets. Chiefs use a lot of multi-tight end sets. And when they go to 3 receivers, maybe he stays outside. Maybe he comes inside. He played a lot of snaps in the slot last year. So did Juju. He's gone. So did McCole Hardman. He's gone. I think Sky Moore leads this team in slot snaps for wide receivers, and Mahomes has a penchant for leaning on them. And he says he's more comfortable in Andy Reid's offense. It all sounds like a really good breakout year.
Okay.
This is a Sky Moore and a Juju Smith-Schuster stat. So last year, Juju had 9 games with at least 5 targets, and in those 9 games, he averaged 15.8 PPR points per game.
Beautiful.
So if that's going to be the opportunity that Sky Moore steps into, then that's the chances. Now, again, is he going to get consistently 5 targets per game? It's not a huge number, but it's not an insignificant one either. So
no,
is he as good?
You said 5 or more, so like some of their
at least 5. There were some games where Juju was 5 and had a good stat line. So it's not like he's going to have to get to 8, but still shows you that Juju can play a little bit when the targets are there, and obviously that's the opportunity that this particular player, whether it's Moore, whether it's James, whether it's both of them, like Dave said, where they're mixing and matching. I think the question becomes is how good is either Rice or Ross? Because if that player is good on the outside, Valdez-Scantling is not moving. He is going to be the one that stays on the field. If the other guy can be the outside receiver, then you have the opportunity to see if they trust Moore, or they don't trust those guys and Moore kicks outside, and then Richie James goes back to playing the slot. Because I don't think they're playing Richie James outside. And if that's the guy that Mahomes and Reid trust and they want more on the field, then the other big receiver is probably not going to play. Now, again, Valdez-Scantling could be the one coming off the field, but it just seems as if everything you're seeing out of training camp, and clearly he's the one that's the most comfortable in this offense, he's probably staying in his role.
Okay. Sky Moore or Quentin Johnston?
Sky.
Sky Moore, but they're very close.
Okay. Another Jamie riser was Sam Laporta. We talked about him at the top of the show. So how about the risers for Dave? Bijan Robinson is a riser for you. From where to where?
Bijan Robinson? No.
Not? Who?
Brian Robinson.
Hey, I should have just copied and pasted instead of typing. Brian Robinson is a ranker for you. It's a riser for you. Well, I'm all thrown off. All right. I ranked him too. Yeah. Brian Robinson is a rankings riser for you. Okay, enough.
Would I take him over Bijan Robinson?
Over Bijan Robinson.
No, he's not quite there.
All right. What do you got on Brian Robinson?
I was originally not drafting much of Brian Robinson, but I like that he's starting to make an impact in the passing game. And, this is Eric Bieniemy's offense, and we didn't see a specific running back break out in Kansas City for a long period of time. I know that Kareem Hunt was really the last one that did it. Edwards-Helaire didn't do it. Pacheco did toward the end of last season. But I wonder if Robinson, in a full offseason where he's not getting shot, is going to end up being more than capable of being better than a typical 2-down running back. And maybe he can catch some flare passes on 1st and 2nd down. And he's obviously going to be their guy in short yardage goal line situations when they're not in a hurry up situation. I kind of view him as another one. He's almost like the Michael Thomas of running backs. And I'm drafting them in the same range, where if I need a running back and it's round 7 or 8, this is who I'm gravitating toward. And I'll say, all right, fine. I'll start him to begin the year and we'll see what happens. I like Antonio Gibson too. And I like in PPR that he's got plenty of upside, and, all the talk that he's going to be in that passing downs role, that's not a surprise. But I do think that Brian Robinson does have potential to potentially break out and be a good number 2 running back this season.
Yeah. So Brian Robinson, or I'm sorry, I hope you didn't say this, AJ Dillon.
I'd still lean toward Dillon.
Okay.
Because he's an Aaron Jones injury away from being amazing. He's already got the goal line role for Green Bay. That's a team that I think is going to try and run a little bit more than they have in the past.
Okay.
And I don't think
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, bad. Go, Dave, finish, then JB.
I don't think you have to reach for Robinson over Dillon. I think you can take Dillon in round 7 and Robinson in round 8 if you wanted to.
I don't want to take 2 trap backs, or
that's the thing. Brian Robinson is the ideal trap back. He just unless they change how they're going to operate, it feels like as if he's just going to be the first and second down guy. He'll get some maybe moderate increases in the passing game. They're going to have to score a lot. They now have a guy that might run a little bit more at the quarterback spot with Sam Howell based on what he did at college. Yeah. And so, I think for Robinson, I will be very curious to see what happens if Gibson gets hurt, because Gibson's had an injury track record as well. Will it be, was it Rodriguez, who they drafted?
Chris Rodriguez, the rookie. Yeah, he can catch.
Who could be involved in the passing game, or will they give Robinson more of an edge there? If he's not scoring touchdowns, he's, I think, going to be very disappointing. I think you're going to get a lot of, 18 for 80, where the rushing average looks good. He doesn't score, 1 catch for 4 yards, those type of numbers, and could just be very frustrating for Brian Robinson. So I don't disagree with where Dave is drafting him. I don't think there's a bad thing to put him as one of your bench running backs, but he's not somebody that I'm very excited about.
Next rankings riser for Dave is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Did I get that right? Jaxon Smith-Njigba, currently on NFC wide receiver 40, a round 8 pick. Going after these young guys, Burks, Dotson, and Jordan Addison. Do you think JSN should go ahead of Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, or Jordan Addison?
I don't think he should. I think that the hype is going to get out of control over Smith-Njigba, and I don't even have him as a round 8 pick yet, but he's going to be a factor in this offense. And what I'm really learning about Seattle is they're probably going to be a lot more pass heavy than they've ever been before. And I think this is what they were building toward in the draft when they got Smith-Njigba, and then they took 2 running backs who could catch the ball out of the backfield. And now they're in a spot where Kenneth Walker's hurt. He's going to miss some time. I still think he's going to be their lead back. Charbonnet's got the shoulder injury. That could sideline him a little bit longer. They might just say, screw it. We've got 3 amazing wide receivers. Let's use them. And Geno Smith was good last year throwing the football against everybody except San Francisco. So Smith-Njigba could end up getting more targets than I initially thought. But I think the Seahawks throw more than I initially thought. And that's going to be good for all the pass catchers for Seattle.
Yeah, I have trouble knowing when to take him. He's in a big group of receivers that I kind of like. I mean, I like Burks, I like Dotson, I like Addison, Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks. They're right after Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And so I think you always have to ask yourself when you're trying to select between 5 players or so, and there's only one that you're going to get. I think you always have to ask yourself about upside. It's not the only thing that comes into play, but does JSN really have big upside this year without an injury to Lockett or Metcalf?
Right. That's where I get hung up on him too.
Yeah. Does he? What do you think?
No.
I would say no, unless he's just amazing, but I don't know. All right. Elijah Moore is your last one. And last rankings riser here. He's going just after that group. JSN, Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks. Then it's Elijah Moore, Cortland Sutton, and Quentin Johnston. Did he crack your top 40?
No, he hasn't even cracked my top 100 overall. So he really moved for me from like Deadsville to a top 110 pick, something like that. Just because he's getting a new lease on his career in Cleveland. Good quarterback throwing to him in Deshaun Watson. Still very worried about how much that team's going to end up throwing. But I do think Elijah Moore can be a good bench receiver.